live in a world that feels perpetually loud, always buzzing with alerts and urgent demands. We scroll through headlines filled with conflict, disappointment, and things that feel hopelessly broken. It is a constant stream of unwanted information, an incessant barrage of noise designed to make us react, to worry, and to judge. These relentless streams can easily become the soundtrack to our suffering. We are taught from childhood that happiness depends on external conditions, having enough money, getting enough praise, or avoiding pain at all costs. We build our sense of self around these precarious supports, our jobs, our relationships, the approval of others. When one pillar cracks, the whole structure feels like it threatens to collapse into chaos. The modern mind is perhaps uniquely wired for anxiety. Every minor slight, every perceived failure, every unexpected roadblock is immediately seized upon and labeled as a catastrophic personal indictment. We mistake discomfort for danger, and we treat every external event, an angry email, a poorly timed comment, bad news on the television screen, as if it were proof that something terrible has happened to us personally. The great philosophical challenge, one first addressed by thinkers thousands of years ago, is this: our suffering rarely comes directly from the events themselves. It arrives through the lens of our judgment about those events. The outer world merely provides the raw material. It is within the quiet chambers of our mind that the art of distress is performed. Consider a simple traffic jam. By itself, it is just metal, brake lights, and wasted time. But if we attach the label to it, that this delay represents a massive failure of our schedule, insult to our productivity, or a sign that we are wasting precious life moments, then suddenly, mere congestion becomes a source of white-hot rage. The emotion is not owned by the jam. It is generated entirely by us. This realization is both liberating and deeply challenging. It asks us to step back from the immediacy of feeling and observe the mechanism of our own distress. We must learn to see that while life will inevitably deliver unexpected headlines, we retain a profound, fundamental power over how we interpret those stories. We are accustomed to thinking that we need control over external variables, the economy, other people's choices, the political climate. But this pursuit of absolute command is a spiritual treadmill. It runs us out of breath and leaves us perpetually exhausted, because much of what truly happens in life simply refuses to be commanded. The core principle, therefore, begins with a radical shift, acknowledging the boundary between what happens asterisk to asterisk us and how we choose to respond asterisk about asterisk what happens. The event itself is neutral. It holds no moral weight, only our judgment, our interpretation that this difficulty means something terrible about us or our life imprints meaning upon it. The ancient Stoics did not advocate for apathy. To truly understand what they meant by indifference was to reject the popular misunderstanding that suffering requires passionate distress over everything. Instead, their concept is closer to clarity, a determined calmness born from understanding reality's true nature. It is not about caring less. It is about beginning to care only about what genuinely belongs to us. The first step in this internal reorientation is recognizing the tyranny of immediate reaction when something happens that irritates or disappoints us. Perhaps a friend cancels plans last minute, or a coworker dismisses an idea. Our default programming is to generate emotional resistance. We feel wronged, we feel slighted, and our thoughts rapidly spiral into narratives of injustice. This is where the practice begins. It requires us to treat our minds less like a collection of immediate responses and more like a laboratory for philosophical investigation. When that sharp feeling of annoyance hits, that spike of bitterness or frustration, we must pause. We must pause just long enough to ask 3 simple yet disruptive questions. What actually happened? Did I predict this event? And is my current reaction proportionate to the facts? The answer usually suggests a gap between our visceral emotion and the objective reality. The headline we are faced with today might be disappointment, but what truly fuels that disappointment is not the absence of the plans, but the internal judgment that those plans were absolutely essential to our sense of happiness. By identifying the judgmental scaffold we have built around the external event, we begin the slow, deliberate process of dismantling it. We learn to strip away the dramatic meaning and reveal the neutral sequence of facts underneath. This mental discipline is not a gentle suggestion. It is an active rebellion against the automaticity of fear and expectation. It demands that we take responsibility for the only thing we truly possess, our capacity to judge. Everything else, the weather, market forces, human whims, is merely external noise flowing around us, utterly indifferent to our desires. To embrace this philosophy is to claim ownership over your inner world. It means acknowledging that the deepest struggles are not fought against traffic or bad bosses. They are fought within the unexamined narratives that run unchecked in the hallways of the mind. The journey begins with simply watching these stories unfold without judging the watcher as well. We are learning to build a life governed not by reaction, but by reasoned response, a disciplined return to ourselves, finding quiet strength where we once believed only loud struggle existed. We often feel like life is a tightly controlled machine. We plan our week with meticulous detail, predict the perfect outcome of every interaction, and strive to keep all moving parts aligned. It feels natural, doesn't it? To believe that if we just manage enough variables, the traffic, the weather, the other person's mood, we can create a perfect existence. Yet, consider this simple image: a small puppet struggling desperately to guide a powerful river. The puppet pulls its strings against the flow, exerting all its will and energy toward a predetermined path. But the river does not care for the effort. It simply moves, following the laws of gravity, geology, and time. No amount of frantic pulling can redirect its fundamental force. This is the essential illusion we cling to, the belief that we have command over everything outside ourselves. We mistake our careful planning, our intense desire for order, for actual control. But most of what truly shapes our experience, the opinions others hold, the global economy, unexpected delays, or even just the fact that a conversation takes an unpredictable turn, These things are not ours to command. They simply happen, like the current moving through the valley. To try and force these external forces into neat little boxes of expectation is exhausting. It creates a constant state of friction between what we desire and what reality delivers. And this friction, my friends, is the root cause of our deepest anxiety and frustration. We are always fighting something that was never meant to be fought. The Stoics taught us to look at this battle for control and realize that it is fundamentally misguided. Much of our suffering comes from placing emotional ownership on outcomes that are inherently random or outside our sphere of influence. When we get upset because a meeting started late, we are not truly angry at the minutes lost. We are angry at the fact that those minutes violated the script we had written for ourselves. The key to finding peace is learning where the boundary lies. There must be an internal demarcation line drawn firmly and calmly. What rests entirely within our own judgment, reaction, and intention, and what happens around us, the things indifferent to our will. Consider the rain. You cannot command it not to fall, but you can decide how you respond to it. Do you curse the sky with venomous resentment, sinking into misery? Or do you accept the damp reality of it, retrieve an umbrella, and simply walk forward, acknowledging the moment without resistance? The first choice requires us to build a wall of resistance against nature. The second asks for something far more difficult, yet infinitely more powerful: acceptance. This recognition is not passive resignation. To accept that we cannot control traffic does not mean we must lie down in the street and weep. Rather, it means recognizing the wasted moment of rage, the time spent wishing the world were different, rather than using that energy to navigate the situation as it truly presents itself. It changes our focus from fighting external circumstances to optimizing internal responses. It is a radical shift. We move from the role of puppet masters, trying desperately to control the river, to simply being wise observers who understand the natural course of the water. We acknowledge that some things are merely given, and wisdom lies in adjusting to what has been given, rather than demanding what we think we deserve. This realization brings with it a profound sense of lightness. It is like shedding heavy, imagined armor, the emotional burden we wear, because we believe we must predict every bad thing or prevent every inconvenience. When we release the need for total control, we liberate ourselves to simply be asterisk, to be present in the imperfect flow of life. The inner citadel, that fortress of the self we spoke of earlier, is not a place where we build insurmountable walls against all influences. It is instead a space of cultivated calm. It is the mind's ability to remain steady when the external winds howl and the tide crashes violently. The gates are open enough for reality to enter, the mistakes, the delays, the unpredicted disappointments, but the core self remains inviolate, untouched by chaos, because its value rests not on prediction, but on judgment. The struggle against inevitability is perhaps humanity's oldest exhaustion. By accepting that some things simply are asterisk, we redirect our boundless energy from futile resistance back into productive action and peaceful contemplation. We stop asking, "How do I make this better?" and start asking instead, "Given what is, how shall I proceed with virtue?" This change in questioning changes the trajectory of a lifetime. We have learned that the chaos of the world often appears to be a source of unavoidable suffering. We realize now that true distress is not caused by external events, not by the angry email, nor the unexpected delay, nor the criticism from a passing stranger. Rather, it arises within us, in the sudden, often unprepared judgments we make about those events. These judgments are the root of our discomfort. They are the emotional reaction before any rational thought has been formed. The Stoics teach us to protect the ground upon which our understanding rests. This foundation is what we call the inner citadel. Imagine it as a magnificent, unbreachable fortress built not of stone and mortar, but of disciplined attention and reasoned philosophy. Its walls are invisible, yet they defend the most precious things: your core values, your peace, and your capacity for rational response. The outer world, the river of circumstance, will always batter at the gates. Opinions will throw stones. Misfortune will send tidal waves. You cannot stop the tide, nor can you force another person to think differently. This is where most people mistakenly spend their emotional energy, trying to repair walls that are not theirs to build or fighting storms they cannot command. This futile resistance exhausts us and leaves us depleted. To map this citadel means identifying its crucial rooms and understanding which areas are sacred ground, what you genuinely own, and which areas belong entirely outside your jurisdiction. We must learn to distinguish sharply between the two. The things outside our control include everything physical, every other person's will, random chance, reputation, wealth, even health in later years. These elements are simply asterisk adiaphora asterisk, or indifferent matters. They flow around us, neither inherently good nor bad for your inner state. Then there is the core of the citadel, your judgment. This is the only area that belongs solely to you. It is the moment between an event occurring and your conscious response to it. When the harsh word is spoken, or when the mistake is made by a loved one, or when plans fall apart spectacularly, that painful pause, that fractional instant where you decide how much weight to give that occurrence, that pause belongs to the citadel. That pause is your power. It requires vigilance. We must become meticulous guardians of our internal life. Many times, we mistake an external event for a personal failure or an unbearable injustice because we have allowed those judgments, judgment of others, judgment of fate, to invade the secure space of our thoughts. This invasion diminishes us from within, leaving us constantly reacting instead of choosing. To map the citadel is therefore a process of ruthless self-inventory. It means asking difficult questions. Where am I expending my emotional guard today? Am I worrying about what another person might think at the dinner table? Am I allowing the passing judgment of a colleague to color my entire sense of self-worth? Are you building your peace based on external affirmations, or are you constructing it from internal principles? The greatest danger is treating our mental state like a commodity something that can be bought with praise or lost through criticism. When we treat our judgments as things outside ourselves, we become hostages to the whims of fortune and people. But if we recognize them as internal operations, as mere thoughts passing through the mind, we regain freedom. The practice is one of consistent redirection. Whenever you feel that sudden swell of frustration or resentment, do not simply react. Pause, take a breath. Mentally build those walls around your critical judgments and notice where they attempt to extend outward. Ask yourself, what part of this emotional weight is actually mine to carry? Am I owning the belief that this situation should be different? Or should have gone another way? Learning this boundary, this inner demarcation line, is liberating. It accepts the reality of chaos without submitting to its tyranny. We are not taught to become emotionally vacant, nor do we aim for a cold indifference that dismisses human connection. Rather, we cultivate an active detachment, one that allows us to acknowledge the pain or the inconvenience of life, yet refuses to let that acknowledgement dictate our response or undermine our fundamental sense of self-worth. This citadel is not a passive bunker where nothing can enter. It is a living headquarters. From this secure place, we observe the storm with wisdom. We see the injustice without allowing ourselves to become consumed by outrage. We witness setbacks without letting them define our ultimate purpose or intrinsic value. We maintain equilibrium because we have trained ourselves to redirect the energy of concern away from what is inevitable and toward what is always under command: our next thought, our present action, and our adherence to virtue. The map of this inner citadel reveals that true freedom is not found in controlling variables, but in mastering the relationship between the variable and the self. It means understanding that while life will inevitably challenge your assumptions, even when things are difficult, you retain the ultimate sovereignty over the judge. You retain the right to choose whether or not to allow the outer storm to become a tempest within your own heart. This quiet, resilient mastery is the deepest form of strength we can ever achieve. We have spent time mapping the inner citadel, the sovereign space of our own judgments. We learned that much of our suffering does not arrive as a sudden catastrophe, but rather as subtle currents of disappointment and unmet expectation. These feelings are often tied to language itself, specifically to the powerful word that signals assumption: should. For years, we may have lived governed by implicit shoulds. The should is nothing more than an attachment to a narrative, a deeply held blueprint for how reality ought to function, how others ought to behave, and how life ought to proceed. But when reality refuses to fit the script, frustration flares, leading to bitterness, resentment, and profound disappointment. To sigh and say, "He should have known better," or "this simply shouldn't happen," is not merely expressing sadness. It is declaring a failure of fate itself, and that judgment belongs outside our control. The core realization we must now face is that assigning any kind of expectation that someone should act in a certain way, or that an event should unfold perfectly, is itself the creation of vulnerability. The should trap blinds us to the raw, mutable present. It forces us into a state of constant disappointment because life is, by its nature, messy and unplanned. People are not walking clocks following predetermined schedules. They are complex beings guided by circumstance, their own unpredictable desires, and a reality that operates outside our meticulous planning. To demand should adherence is to live in perpetual conflict with the world. Consider the profound energy expended simply maintaining these expectations. We spend emotional reserves anticipating what asterisk ought asterisk to be true, only to find ourselves exhausted when those invisible anchors are pulled loose by reality's unpredictable tide. This expenditure leaves us drained and perpetually slightly aggrieved. It is a mental burden far heavier than any actual setback. The practice of recognizing the should requires one profound act of detachment, releasing the claim on how things asterisk must asterisk be. We must learn to replace the forceful conviction of should with the softer, more truthful inquiry of what is. This simple linguistic shift signals a fundamental change in perspective, a move from demanding justice or order to accepting what simply presents itself to us. It is not acceptance born of surrender, but acceptance born of profound strength and observation. Think of relationships first. When we approach others with a should, we are essentially issuing judgment upon their free will. We judge them for falling short of the ideal character portrait that exists inside our own minds. This places an unbearable weight on them, and it also confines us to disappointment when they fail the test. To practice non-expectation in relationships is radical. It means seeing people and ourselves as inherently imperfect and beautifully unbound. It requires a profound leap of trust, trusting their basic humanity even when it disappoints our expectations. The consequences ripple out into every corner of life, impacting our work, our routines, and our interactions with the cosmos itself. We may feel frustrated that traffic asterisk should asterisk be faster, or that a colleague asterisk should asterisk remember an important detail. When we frame these external variables through the lens of should, we are not solving problems. We are creating internal conflicts with reality. We become small gods demanding obedience from things and people that simply have no mechanism for recognizing our decrees. The resulting freedom is a vast, quiet space. It is the realization that your happiness, your peace, and your sense of self-worth cannot be contingent upon external compliance. They cannot be rented out by expecting perfect adherence from others or predictability from fortune. This recognition pulls us back to the center, back to the inner citadel we have been fortifying. The only thing truly within our sovereignty is the willingness to let go, the willingness to simply observe what asterisk is asterisk without framing it with the brittle scaffold of should. This letting go is not apathy. Let me be clear on that distinction. Apathy suggests a draining indifference, a lack of caring altogether. What we are cultivating here is something far more robust. Mindful engagement paired with emotional detachment. We care deeply about virtue, about acting rightly and speaking truthfully. but we must detach our peace from the outcome of those actions. The effort itself becomes the worthy measure, not the applause or the perfect result. Our concern shifts entirely inward. Are my thoughts disciplined? Is my judgment clear? Am I acting in accordance with reason right now? This continuous practice of dropping should is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. It demands humility, the acknowledgement that we are merely participants, not directors of our own lives or the lives of others. We learn to greet unexpected delays, not with angry frustration over why they should be on time, but with a calm recognition of what awaits us in this moment and how best to use it. We meet criticism not with defensiveness, because someone should understand our intention by asking simply, what is the truth contained in these words? And whether that truth requires nothing more than acknowledgement. The life lived without should is a life characterized by radical acceptance, the kind of powerful acceptance that doesn't require permission and doesn't depend on external forces. It is the truest state of mastery, allowing us to find peace, not when the world finally aligns with our hopes, but immediately when we cease the battle against reality as it appears. And we have spent these chapters understanding that true freedom lies not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering the space between our thoughts and our reactions. We learned to dismantle the powerful trap of expectation, realizing that assigning a should is merely an agreement to suffer when reality disagrees with our desired narrative. Now, we stand at the precipice of proactive peace, the art of premeditation. This is not morbid contemplation, it is intellectual preparation, a mental inoculation against surprise and emotional shock. The Stoic practice called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, might sound daunting, even alarmist. To many modern minds, confronting potential tragedy feels overwhelming. Yet, we ask you to consider this differently. It is not about dwelling on pain for its own sake. It is a disciplined act of emotional resource management. The human mind has a remarkable capacity for denial. We build intricate little edifices of hope and pleasant fantasy. And when an unexpected challenge appears, a job loss, illness, or rejection, these structures collapse with devastating force, often leading to paralysis or despair. Our initial shock is not just at the event itself, it is at the fact that the event violated our careful belief in stability. They suggest we do the opposite of avoidance. Instead of sweeping hardship under the rug and hoping never to see it, we invite it into a calm, thoughtful chamber. We visualize it, but this visualization must be precise. It is not about painting the most gruesome details, rather, it is an exercise in cognitive desensitization. Take a situation that causes you genuine anxiety right now. Perhaps it is conflict with a loved one, or financial instability, or failure in a professional setting. Instead of reacting to the vague fear of this thing happening, we ask ourselves, if this happens, what specific steps will I take? And more importantly, how will I sustain myself afterward? The power of premeditation comes from stripping away the element of surprise. Surprise is the engine of uncontrolled panic. when we have already traveled through the imagined landscape of difficulty, when we have mentally logged its contours, recognized its hardest points, and mapped out our potential responses, the actual event loses its mythical force. It becomes merely a difficult itinerary item. We are not asking you to embrace catastrophe. We are simply preparing your inner citadel for battle by knowing where the weak walls might be. To imagine that rain has been forecast only as a distant possibility, never truly accepted. When it finally arrives, the initial shock can make us feel exposed and unprepared. But if you have already visualized standing in the downpour, feeling the cold, adjusting your pace, accepting the inconvenience of carrying an umbrella when the actual rain falls, the experience is simply one of execution, not survival. This method teaches us radical self-trust. It reminds us that much of our suffering stems from a sense of unexpected vulnerability. We treat external events as if they might be bad, thereby robbing them of their power to shock us into emotional immaturity when they occur. By practicing pre-mortem visualization, we transform the unknown variable into a known challenge. This is profoundly calming because it gives us back agency. Our locus of control shifts from predicting happiness, which is impossible, to preparing for adversity. We move from an anxious posture of waiting for something bad, to a grounded stance of knowing how we will handle it. It also requires distinguishing between the catastrophe itself and our reaction to it. When we visualize job loss, the catastrophic image might be poverty or homelessness. But by focusing instead on our own immediate response, calling my network, updating my skills, maintaining routine, we realize that the most immediate threat is not external scarcity, but internal chaos. We must understand that this practice does not harden us into emotional robots. Rather, it achieves a deep form of empathetic resilience, because we have rehearsed difficulty in our minds. When true hardship comes, our empathy for others remains intact. We simply react from a place of practiced calm rather than panicked reaction. We are better equipped to lend aid, to withstand failure, and to meet complexity with thoughtful deliberation. The consequence of this mindful preparation is an elevated baseline of peace. We are less fragile, less reliant on external perfection, because our internal sense of self-worth has been rooted not in smooth sailing times, but in the resilience shown during imagined storms. I invite you now to treat your future anxieties not as prophecy, but as study material. Do not simply dread, rather systematically analyze. What is the worst reasonable outcome? And crucially, when that happens, what resources, physical, emotional, or rational, do I already possess to navigate it? This thoughtful confrontation with reality strips away fear's seductive power of mystery, leaving only manageable complexity. This sustained intellectual effort is perhaps the deepest act of self-care available. Mastering the landscape of your own potential suffering so that you may live fully in the present moment, unburdened by unfounded dread. We live in an age that constantly demands a performance. Our lives feel less like personal journeys and more like ongoing drafts submitted for review. We are always being assessed, judging our worth not by the depth of our conviction or the integrity of our character, but by the applause we receive from others. This pressure creates a relentless emotional state, the fear of missing the mark. We tailor our words, adjust our emotions, and manage our visible failures to fit the expectations of an invisible audience. It is a life lived under constant spotlight, and the weight of that scrutiny is profoundly exhausting. But who is this audience, and whose standards are we striving to meet? Often, it is just a collection of fleeting opinions projected onto us by others, or even worse, internalized criticisms born from our own demanding expectations. The greatest misunderstanding here is equating external validation with actual self-worth. We treat approval like currency, something that must be continuously earned and spent. When the applause falters, when the praise does not arrive, we feel a sudden, dizzying plunge into inadequacy. Our emotional state becomes enslaved to the shifting sands of public perception. But what if true peace lies in dismantling this entire elaborate theater? What if the greatest performance we ever give is the one of simply asterisk being asterisk? This shift demands courage, because it requires us to relinquish something deeply ingrained, the need to be seen and accepted. For centuries, the philosophers have offered a profound counter-narrative to this culture of visibility. They taught that our value must originate solely from within, making the external gaze irrelevant. Consider the heart of the matter. When we base our self-worth on how others respond to us, on their praise, their criticism, or even their indifference, we are merely renting happiness. We are living in a perpetual state of debt, forever owed emotional security by an unstable source. To be truly free is to own your own internal landscape. It means constructing a sanctuary where the outside world has no jurisdiction over your core sense of self. This involves retraining ourselves to separate observation from judgment. When criticism arrives, we instinctively feel attacked. We become defensive because our ego perceives it as a threat to its carefully constructed narrative. But the Stoic perspective asks us to pause and analyze. Is this opinion an actual reflection of my truth, or merely another passing thought passing through someone else's mind? By adopting this distance, we reclaim sovereignty. We stop fighting against reality simply because it feels uncomfortable or unjust. We begin to see that much of our discomfort stems not from what happens, but from the story we are telling ourselves about what happens. The greatest shift is accepting that there will be moments when no one applauds, and acceptance is not defeat. It is the foundational pillar of lasting inner strength. It is moving beyond needing consensus and learning to trust your own internal compass, even if it points in an unpopular direction. This mastery requires practice, a consistent refusal to let external expectations dictate our sense of value or purpose. We must learn to withstand the silence as well as the storm. We are not seeking numbness, nor are we advocating for cold detachment. Rather, we seek a powerful, resilient equanimity, the steady knowledge that while we cannot control the performance life demands from us. We hold absolute authority over our response to it. This is where the work truly begins, recognizing the difference between genuine accountability and performative self-monitoring. True strength arrives when we feel comfortable simply existing without any need for an audience. It means allowing ourselves to be flawed, to make mistakes, and to endure criticism without it causing a seismic shift in our fundamental sense of being worthy. This internal freedom is the ultimate art, the ability to live fully, deeply, authentically, regardless of whether anyone else notices or cares at all. We have spent time considering the illusion of control and the necessity of guarding our inner sanctuary. We learn to distinguish sharply between what is truly ours, our judgments, our intentions, our immediate response, and everything that simply happens around us. The traffic jam, the unkind word, the unpredictable whim of another person's heart. This understanding allowed us to begin building a fortress. But true freedom requires more than just acknowledging the walls. It demands finding a way to stand outside those walls altogether. We are now entering the space of deep reflection. We are going to adopt what was called the spectator view. Imagine yourself not as the active participant in your own drama, but as an observer sitting quietly in the grand hall of your mind. You are watching life unfold, the sudden flash of anger from a colleague, the disappointment of a venture failing, the sharp pang of regret for words spoken years ago. Nothing changes. Nothing can be controlled by this detached self, except the act of merely watching it happen. This is not escapism, nor is it emotional numbness. To misunderstand the spectator view is to mistake distance for indifference. Indifference is a weaponized apathy. Detaching oneself, however, is simply clarity. It is recognizing that you are the mind asterisk, observing asterisk the thoughts and emotions. You are not the thought itself. You are not the fleeting emotion. You are the steady consciousness witnessing it arrive and depart. The inner conflict we face every day stems from fusing with our own narrative. We believe, for instance, that when we feel anxiety, we are asterisk anxious. When we experience shame, we are asterisk ashamed. The spectator technique gently breaks this identification. It asks, who is doing the feeling? Where does this sensation reside within the self? By pausing and framing it as a passing event, a mere mental headline on an invisible screen, the emotion loses its immediate power to command action. It becomes data, something to be analyzed, not something to be obeyed. Consider a minor setback, a perceived slight from a friend, a small humiliation in public. The natural, reactive path is immediate defense. Anger flares, defensiveness takes hold, and the argument begins before the thought has fully formed. This reaction pulls us into the drama, making us poor actors of our own lives, governed by sudden impulse. But when we adopt the spectator view, that internal siren call for immediate response falters. We pause, and in that tiny fraction of a breath, there is space. Space enough to notice, I am experiencing irritation. I observe this feeling now. It belongs to my mind, but it does not define me. The power here is profound, because the emotional turmoil always seems urgent. demanding immediate attention and response. The spectator view teaches us that nothing truly requires immediate action, only careful observation. By simply observing a thought, such as a harsh self-criticism or an accusation directed outward, we are engaging in what Marcus Aurelius called reflective governance of the soul. We treat our inner life not like raw sewage needing emergency flushing, but like a vast, complicated theater where we sit in the royal box and watch the curtain rise and fall on every scene played out by others and even ourselves. This practice requires relentless self-discipline because we are always trained to be asterisk in asterisk the action. Our culture demands participation. It rewards loud complaint or vigorous defense. To simply watch is often perceived as being unconcerned or worse, weak. We must reframe this act of pure observation not as withdrawal, but as peak engagement. It is the highest form of involvement and investment in your own unshakable peace. The spectator view fundamentally separates what happens to you from who you are. You are never solely defined by what fate does to you or by how another person behaves toward you. You remain the continuous, unshakable consciousness that notices both the storm and the calm. This detachment is not passive resignation. It is active mastery. It is recognizing, I may not be able to stop the rain from falling. The external event remains beyond my reach, but I can choose how I observe it, how much I internalize its chill, and whether I allow it to disrupt the steady rhythm of my inner life. The process builds mental resilience brick by careful brick. Every time we manage to step back into that observer role, we are strengthening a muscle that modern life rarely asks us to use, the muscle of pure, non-judgmental awareness. We begin to see patterns. Where do I habitually get pulled into drama? Is it when I feel unseen? When I expect praise? Identifying these predictable triggers from the detached height is the first step toward permanent immunity. It allows us to prescript a response that does not involve emotional expenditure, a graceful default setting of steady observation. This state is often misunderstood as coldness, but true equanimity is far warmer than mere lack of feeling. It is the robust warmth of self-possession. It is the peaceful knowledge that while the world continues its inevitable chaos, the messy business of human interaction, and fate's unpredictable hand, your core center, remains untouched, stable, and anchored by your own conscious attention. To view life through the eyes of the detached spectator is to finally claim ownership over the most vital territory, the uninterrupted continuity of your own inner peace. We have journeyed through the architecture of the mind, understanding that much of our suffering is not caused by the world itself, but by the vivid judgment we layer upon it. We learned to build an inner citadel, a sanctuary where reason could shelter us from the unpredictable torrents of external events and other people's expectations. But building this fortress is only the first step. The ultimate mastery of Stoicism asks us not simply to resist panic, but to actively redirect our entire sense of self towards disciplined action. It asks us to change what we value fundamentally, This brings us to a vital shift in focus, the currency of effort. For too long, when we speak of virtue and inner peace, the conversation often drifts toward merely feeling calm, to being undisturbed by circumstance. Yet, Stoicism is not a philosophy of inertia or withdrawal. It is an active call to disciplined engagement with life. To be fully aligned with reason means recognizing that our highest measure of worth cannot be found in the outcome of things, for outcomes are slippery and indifferent. They depend on countless external variables, the whims of fortune, the policies of men, the actions of others, variables we do not control. The mistake we often make is equating effort with visible success. We believe that if we expend enough energy or plan diligently enough, the world will respond favorably. We link our self-worth to achievements, a promotion received, a relationship maintained, a problem solved by external means. When these outcomes inevitably fail to materialize, we feel not just disappointment, but profound failure, a collapse of the inner sense of value. The emotional reckoning is severe, for we have anchored our spiritual well-being to foundations built entirely outside ourselves. This chapter forces us to re-examine what truly constitutes a good life, and specifically, what constitutes a good effort. According to the Stoics, what defines virtuous action is not whether it achieves its intended goal, but rather the quality of the intent itself. The ethical measure must remain wholly within our own sphere. Effort becomes self-contained. Its reward is integrity, not success. Imagine preparing for a journey. You can meticulously pack your bags, plan every route, and check all the maps. This is commendable preparation. But consider what happens when the itinerary is derailed, a bridge collapses, or the weather turns treacherous. Your deepest disappointment is usually aimed at the failure of the destination, not the quality of your packing or planning. We do the same thing with life. We pour our best selves, our most rigorous thought and emotional energy into a desired outcome, be it convincing another person, achieving some social standing, or preventing an undesirable event. And when reality dictates otherwise, we judge ourselves as failures. The Stoic corrective is profound. Success must be redefined as the perfect application of reason to the task at hand. The moment you shift your internal measuring stick from "did this work" to "did I give my utmost care and best judgment to this endeavor," a tremendous burden is lifted. Your self-evaluation becomes immediately autonomous, immune to fortune's caprices. Consider any challenging endeavor, learning a skill, resolving conflict, or nurturing a relationship. There will always be variables you cannot command. You cannot control another person's temperament. You cannot guarantee the economy's stability. And you certainly cannot force an abstract concept like patience upon someone else. These are external data points. What you can command is your response to those things, your level of preparation, your commitment to honesty, and the sheer virtue embedded in the process itself. When we make this distinction explicit, effort ceases to be a gamble for external rewards. It becomes an act of self-definition. The goal is no longer favorable outcomes, but virtuous action taken with diligence and wisdom. We focus on maximizing our asterisk proherses, asterisk, which is best translated as the faculty of choice or practical reason, the inner machinery that allows us to align our desires with reality. This pivot changes everything about how we approach failure. Failure, in this framework, is not a catastrophe. It is merely feedback. It is data showing where your current judgment needs refinement, or where external variables introduced unexpected resistance. The wise person does not lament the fallen structure. They study why it fell and adjust their foundation for next time. The challenge now, therefore, is to make this realization actionable. How do we live day by day, moment by moment, only valuing the effort itself? We must cultivate a relentless internal audit. After every interaction, every challenging morning commute, every disappointing meeting, pause and ask, what part of my energy was spent hoping for an outcome I could not guarantee? Can I withdraw that energy, recognizing instead the excellence embedded in the attempt? Where did I allow fear of future disappointment to compromise the integrity of the present action? This mastery over effort is perhaps the most difficult peak to climb, because it requires us to live continuously in a state of radical internal accountability. It means embracing the uncomfortable truth that sometimes, despite your best efforts, even when you act with perfect wisdom and diligence, nothing changes externally. And in those moments, the Stoic finds profound peace, not because things happened as planned, but because the self remained perfectly aligned, having fulfilled its virtuous duty, regardless of the results. This acceptance of effort for effort is true emotional sovereignty, a resilience far deeper than mere complaint or temporary optimism. It is the quiet dignity of knowing that your worth was never up for negotiation by chance. /text, you've spent time defining the great principles of internal control. We learned that our judgments are sovereign territory, and that much suffering arises simply from fighting the reality that exists outside our grasp. This understanding is profound. It is a shift in philosophy that seems monumental. Yet, like any wisdom, its greatest strength lies not in grand pronouncements, but in the small, repeated acts of daily life. Mastery does not come from a single epiphany, but from showing up consistently to the miniature battles of mundane routine. Consider your day as it unfolds, the commute that runs late, the mildly annoying miscommunication with a colleague, the rain that forces you off your usual path. These small moments are not trivial. They are the proving grounds for the entire philosophy we have discussed. They are the laboratory where indifference is honed into genuine strength. The ancients understood that virtue was a habit. It required repetition. If we only practiced resilience when faced with disaster, our emotional muscles would atrophy in comfort. We must find ways to practice self-mastery while simply waiting for the coffee machine to warm up, or while navigating rush hour traffic. These are our small indifference practices. The goal here is not merely endurance, it is cultivation. It is about catching yourself in the moment of mild annoyance and pausing, forcing a breath, asking that familiar question: is my reaction proportional? Am I attaching an expectation to this minor delay? Do I need to judge this inconvenience as detrimental? Many times, we are trapped by small irritations because they feel personal. We take someone else's delayed response or forgotten detail as a reflection of us, a judgment on our worthiness. This is the subtle snare, the moment we recognize that these minor inconveniences belong to the realm of neutral external facts rather than personalized attacks. The sting dissolves. They simply are. Think of taking a slightly different route home today. Perhaps you usually take the main boulevard because it is fastest, but traffic has forced you onto a smaller side street. Initially, your mind might resist this deviation, perhaps labeling the detour as wrong or inefficient. This internal resistance is pure judgment at work. But by meeting that unexpected change with quiet acceptance, by simply observing the path beneath your feet and adapting calmly, you are performing an act of profound indifference. You are saying, I will accept this condition because it is the reality of this moment, and my peace does not depend on its perfection. Consider a difficult conversation at work. Perhaps someone critiques an idea you were proud of. Your immediate emotional response might be defensiveness, the sudden flare of injustice. This chapter asks us to pause before that internal rebuttal takes hold. Instead, we use the spectator view even here. We observe the criticism as mere data, a stream of words emanating from another person's mind, just like any other thought you are trained to see from a distance. The core practice is recognizing the difference between an event and your interpretation of that event. The fact is, there was a critique. Your judgment might be, they think I am inadequate, or this hurts my professional reputation. These judgments build the fire, the raw material. The comment itself is merely the spark. The emotional workout here requires incredible diligence. It means accepting the unavoidable minor failures of logistics, the slow service at a restaurant, or the petty misunderstanding with a friend. When you choose to treat these small daily frictions not as personal insults, but as neutral variables in the flow of existence, you are building what we might call an emotional callus. This layer of detachment is protective. It allows life's minor thorns to prick only the skin and not puncture the underlying spirit. This ability to remain calm amid trivial disorder is what defines true equanimity. It is a mental musculature that builds not through feats of valor, but through the gritty repetition of saying, it is as it will be. Not in a fatalistic sense, for Stoicism requires engagement, but in an accepting sense. I am engaged with reason and virtue right now, regardless of these small irritations. My virtuous action remains my focus, even if the universe provides me with suboptimal timing. We are transforming our inner self into something robust, like a river stone worn smooth by constant flow. The daily friction polishes away the sharp edges of excessive worry, resentment, and expectation. Each delay accepted, each minor setback ignored as cause for internal drama, is one more time you prove your sovereignty over your mind. You teach yourself that life's rhythm does not require everything to conform to a perfect, optimized schedule. It simply flows, and your task is to flow with it, remaining fully present and optimally reasonable, no matter the speed or direction of the current. We have journeyed through the disciplines of Stoicism, learning to locate our sovereignty within an inner citadel. We learn to distinguish between what we can control, our judgment and our effort, and what flows around us, the unpredictable river of external events. But perhaps the greatest misunderstanding lingers, that true peace is achieved when life is perfectly still, that nothing ever goes wrong. We must refine this understanding. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, is not the surrender to fate. It is something far more elegant and powerful. It is not numbness, nor is it resignation. True acceptance is a state of alignment, a deep internal harmony that does not require external conditions to be ideal. The art we discuss today is the practice of what I call elegant acceptance. It is the conscious choice to greet reality exactly as it presents itself, without first passing it through the filters of our desires or expectations. Consider this moment, right now. Whatever situation you find yourself in, a disappointment, a necessary change, an unexpected setback, your initial internal reaction will naturally be to resist it. Your mind will say, "This shouldn't be happening," or "This is unfair." These are the complaints of resistance. They create friction between your inner ideal self and outer reality. Elegant acceptance asks us instead to observe that resistance itself. It invites a single pause, a quiet breath, and the question, what am I attaching myself to here? Am I reacting out of judgment of how things ought to be, or am I simply observing what is? This moves us beyond merely knowing what we can control. It asks us to relinquish, the need for perfect alignment between our internal narrative and external reality. It is a radical form of trust. Trust, not in that events will always go right, but trust in our own capacity to navigate whatever occurs with reason and dignity. Imagine life as a complex tapestry woven over time. Some threads are vibrant gold, the moments we plan for or desperately desire. Other threads are muted grays, perhaps unexpectedly tangled knots of difficulty or loss. Resistance compels us to pull on those gray threads, trying to force them back into the pattern they were never meant to be in. Elegant acceptance acknowledges all the colors, the gold and the gray, and finds beauty not despite the discord, but within the very complexity of its composition. The practice is multifaceted. First, it demands profound observation. We must see that when we feel deeply upset, we are not merely reacting to an event, we are reacting to our interpretation of the event. The loss of a job does not inherently equal despair. The judgment that I cannot survive without this causes the despair. By labeling the thought, "This is my catastrophic interpretation," we detach ourselves from it, creating space where emotion once held dominion. Next, acceptance requires embracing the inherent messiness of existence. We must understand that change is not an exception to life. It is its fundamental nature. When we mistake instability for failure, we set ourselves up for constant emotional turmoil. By normalizing flux, by recognizing that everything flows and nothing remains static, we inoculate ourselves against the shock of disruption. This cultivated equanimity, this elegant acceptance, is the ultimate goal of the philosophical journey. It does not promise a life devoid of struggle, but it promises something far more valuable, an unshakable interior baseline. When the storms inevitably arrive, you will not be caught off guard by emotional shock. You will simply observe the storm as data, a powerful display of nature that happens around you, and continue your inner work. It means making peace with the limitations of human effort. We are meant to struggle. We are meant to change. We are meant to fail sometimes and to rise again. These experiences are not flaws in the design of life. They are simply the material needed for growth. The wise mind views adversity not as a punitive force, but as necessary feedback, a rigorous form of training. This acceptance is an active posture, never a passive slouching. It requires courage. It takes the effort to look directly at the difficult truth, the loss, the disappointment, the unchangeable nature of others' will, and say, I see you. This is what it is. And in that act of seeing, we find our strength. The true freedom, therefore, is not found in commanding external outcomes, but in mastering the space between stimulus and response. It is finding grace in the interim moments, the gray areas, the inconveniences that make up the majority of a life well lived. This elegant acceptance allows you to move through the world with profound power, the quiet dignity of someone whose inner peace does not depend on the whim of fortune or the approval of others. It is knowing that no matter what happens outside the fortress, within your reasoned mind, there is always a return to calm observation.